Welcome to the Weekly Takeaway, what you need to know from the news. And this has been a crazy news week, even going back into last weekend. So many things have happened. And as we dive into this today, I want to remind you that this show is not about political analysis. It's about evaluating what's happening, understanding it to the best of our ability, and then diving into some takeaways, pulling out some things that we can apply to our own lives. It can be overwhelming to live in a world where so many things are happening, and this is our opportunity to say, all right, from all of those things, what do I need to know, and how does that apply to my life? And hopefully this is that for you. A lot of things happened. As I mentioned, we could go back into the end of last week and understand that a big event a lot of folks have talked about for a long time finally happened, and in a lot of ways happened without a lot of fanfare. Brexit is what they're calling it. We know that that is the separation of the United Kingdom from the European Union. It seemed to be a fairly amicable divorce, but it happened. And there are people on both sides of that. There are those who for years have debated the virtue of it, why it needs to happen. On the other side, those who are arguing that it's going to kill not only the United Kingdom, but hurt the European Union and the global economy. What will actually happen remains to be seen, but here's what we've learned from not only that event, but events just like it. There is something in the human heart that calls to liberty. Most people desire to be free. Now, that is not the case for everyone, but most people desire to be free. They desire to be able to decide what they're going to do and not do. They want to put in office the politicians that they will support and remove the politicians they won't. Really, that's what Brexit is all about. It's about the majority of folks in the United Kingdom saying something like this: we want to decide what our country does on our behalf. We don't want outside influence telling us what we should and should not do. We see this everywhere. We saw this not too long ago in the protests that took place in Hong Kong and continue to take place in Hong Kong, where folks have taken to the street and again said something like that. We want to be the masters of our own destiny. We want to decide what we're going to do. We want to be free. We see this around the world. I think it's an interesting phenomenon, even in the United States, to see rallies put on by our president. And people wonder, how in the world does he get so many people to come and listen to him speak? And why is it that people will spend an entire night out on the street in the cold waiting to get in just to catch a glimpse of him? There are a lot of reasons. I don't understand all of them probably, but I'll tell you this. We have a president who speaks to people in a way that resonates with them, in a way that resonates for the cause of liberty and freedom and individuals being able to decide their own way. There is something in the human heart, mark it down, that desires freedom and liberty. And the Brexit of last week, the division of the European Union from the United Kingdom is something that really illustrated that for us. What an amazing event. Now, coming back to the United States of America. Again, lots of stuff happening this week. It was crazy. At the beginning of the week, we had our first primary, the Iowa Caucus, the first primary really in the Democratic race for who the Democratic Party's nominee will be for the general election. And you'd think that would go well. You'd think it would. And it didn't. It's the end of the week. That happened on Monday. We're still trying to figure out exactly who won. Now, as this airs, we'll know who won, but what a mess. It was a messy, messy process. It has taken nearly a week to get the results, and we're still not exactly sure what all will come of that. Here's the takeaway for me. It's one I come back to again and again and again. With all information, particularly information related to politics, we must be discerning listeners. Discerning receivers of the news. It's been amazing to watch this week how a party that criticized another party not too long ago for their handling of elections has done the exact same thing, almost in a grander way. It's been a mess. They're trying to figure it out, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. But we must be discerning listeners of the news. Don't take things at face value. As I mentioned before, get beneath the headlines and figure out what's actually going on. Now, as if that wasn't enough, this week, we also had the State of the Union address by our president. And love the president or hate the president, he said some things, again, that really speak to the heart of liberty and who we are as Americans. So many takeaways, and I could spend many minutes just talking about this, but there are a few that I'd like to illustrate. Takeaways for me personally, lessons I've tried to learn in my own life by watching all of that unfold this week. in a hypercharged political environment where an impeachment's taking place, and about half the people in the room hated the man speaking, and half the people loved him and cheered him, we saw some things unfold that were extremely interesting. As our president spoke, he did what many presidents, and going back for many numbers of years, presidents have done during the State of the Union. He used citizens and the lives of citizens to illustrate points that he was making. As he was speaking, he had families of service members stand up. Families who, while their service member husband and father is deployed, are serving in their communities. He talked about the impact and the sacrifice that those families make. It was an incredible moment. He honored a Tuskegee Airman, a man who is 101 years old. He had him stand up, and he honored that man while he was giving his State of the Union address. And many other stories he told. And really, as we watched all of that unfold, what we saw was a group of people who generally don't like each other, can't agree on much, could agree that caring for people always counts. There are difficult times in our world where it's hard to find common ground. But common ground can be found as we serve other people, and as we care for other people, and as we applaud the good work of other folks. Caring for people always counts. We saw that illustrated again throughout this speech. We also saw something else illustrated, and here it is. Human nature is not tied to a particular status in life. Human nature is not tied to a particular status in life. Again, whether you love the president or hate the president is not the point. We had illustrated for us well that really those at the top of the heap, if you will, in national politics, those elected officials who are not only writing policy but moving our country forward or backward, depending on your perspective, they have the ability to act not like professionals who are carrying us forward, but like children, doing things that children would do and doing things that we scold our young children for doing. And we try to teach our kids to be nice to each other and find common ground and move forward together, even with people that you don't like. But what we learned is that the human heart and the darkness of the heart, and so often the bitterness that accompanies the human heart, is not tied in any way to your stature or station in life. That's important for us to remember in politics, but it's also important for us to remember in life. We all have the ability to act like children, just like our politicians sometimes do. It's in all of us, but so it is in the people that we interact with. We need to be very careful and understand that all of us have a dark part inside of us. We need to be careful to remember that. We also then need to understand, and this is something that I reiterate as often as I can, there are cycles to this whole thing. Politics, the good economy, the bad economy, the president that you like, the president that you don't like, the politicians that are doing what you think they should, and the ones who may not be doing exactly what you think they should. All of this happens in cycles. Why do I say that? Because it brings me hope. When things are going really well, I need to prepare for when they're not going as well. I need to know that that's going to happen. There are cycles. But when things aren't going as well as I would like for them to, I need to also understand that eventually they'll come back. This is how it works. And it's important for us in the midst of a process like the one we're involved in to step back, to get perspective, to take away the things that we can, to breathe deeply, and to know that it's going to be okay. It's a cycle. It will come back around. Applaud those that are doing a good job, but don't worry too much when it doesn't seem to be going exactly right. There are cycles. So, this all happened this week. The Iowa Caucuses, the State of the Union, and the acquittal of our president in the process of impeachment. Finally, the Senate concluded and voted to acquit the president. And if you've been following this, I'm not going to re-outline all of this for you, but what a crazy week as the president on Tuesday night gave the State of the Union and talked about the various policies that he's been involved in and the things that he's done, where our country is, and then the next day is acquitted in this process. Life goes on. It's not the end of the world. Life goes on. Things happen, good, bad, and otherwise, but the process keeps moving forward. My takeaway from all of this, in addition to that, however, was this one, that the system, our system, the system of the United States, really it does function. It seems dysfunctional sometimes. It's not always all that we would like for it to be, and one could argue that this process of the impeachment has demonstrated that. what is demonstrated to me is that the checks and balances that were put in place by our founders when they developed this process, that those checks and balances, that the process, it actually does work. And I'm thankful that it works. We also have to understand, though, that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. Different control of the House than the Senate brought us the result on the other side of this that it did. And again, if you're for that result or not, you need to know that elections have consequences. We have another election coming up, and everyone needs to vote and vote their conscience and do their best to put the people in place that they desire to be in place, because elections have consequences. It's been said that we get the elected officials that we deserve, and there's a lot of truth to that. That's a great takeaway. Understand what's going on, get beneath the headlines, figure it out, and vote your conscience. And then when things do happen, you can just rest assured you did your part, and we'll get back to where we need to be eventually. These are important lessons. So much happened this week, and we could spend the next 30 minutes just laundry listing everything else that took place. It's been a crazy week, but it's been a good one, and I think a good one for our country on the other side of all this. Brexit happened, a call to liberty, and I'm thankful that in the human heart there is a desire for liberty. We need to pursue that. We need to applaud it. We need to be thankful for it. As the Iowa Caucuses took place, a crazy process. They're trying to figure it out. Things don't seem to change that much, but you need to be discerning about what you hear and what you believe. The State of the Union was given. Some people were honored, and that seems to be the common ground that we can find. What an amazing thing it is to see that. But we need to know that human nature is not tied to any particular station or background. In our hearts, there is a place that we all need to be careful not to expose. There are cycles. There's good and bad, but eventually it all comes back around. As our president was acquitted, we understand that life goes on. The things that seem so bad are not the end of the world, but that the system functions the way it's supposed to. But with that, elections have consequences. These are your takeaways from this week. We'll see what next week brings. Who knows? Maybe it'll be another one like this. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll look forward to that, and we'll sum that up for you and try to develop some takeaways for you in that as well. Thank you for watching. If you have not yet, like, subscribe, share. Get this out to other folks who can enjoy it and learn from it as well. And we will see you next time. Hope you have a great weekend.